Hello everyone, this is Professor Troy, and this is Psych 36 Abnormal Psychology for Kingsborough, Winter Session 2015. I wanted to make a brief video about eating disorders and talk to you a little bit about some of the specifics of the disorders. They can be a little bit confusing because, number one, everybody has to eat. Number two, everybody's experienced changes in their diet and changes in their eating behavior. Number three, a good number of people have done certain things when they've been dieting or trying to adjust their weight, either if they're going to a wedding or a big party or a graduation or something like that, some type of major event, where they've done things that might look like they're symptoms of an eating disorder, but they're not. They might do things like starve themselves, they might do things like go on crash diets or cleanses and things like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody has an eating disorder. Eating disorders can be difficult to diagnose for a couple of different reasons. Number one, everybody's eating pattern changes. Number two, people with eating disorders tend to get very, very good at hiding the symptoms of an eating disorder. Once you have an eating disorder, you really don't want treatment for it for the most part. You hide the symptoms, you'll sort of do anything you can to not get treated because the eating disorder becomes sort of a part of your identity, for lack of a better term. So they're very difficult to diagnose and they're very difficult to treat. We'll kind of go into all of these sort of one at a time, and we'll see if we can make it make more sense. Now, the most common and well-known eating disorder is anorexia nervosa. And people with anorexia, the main goal that they have is to lose weight. I'll say it again. The main goal of people suffering with anorexia is to lose weight. This is different from bulimia. The main goal that people who have bulimia have is to maintain weight, and there's a difference, okay? And this is really the one thing that distinguishes one disorder from the other, if you had to pin it down to one thing. There are a couple of other minor things, but the major difference between anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa is the goal. People with anorexia look to lose weight. They want to be as thin as possible, and the thinner they get, the fatter they think they are. People with bulimia nervosa, on the other hand, they can be slightly heavy, they can be a normal weight, they might even be a little bit underweight. Their goal is not to lose weight, their goal is to maintain weight, and it's arbitrary, it's totally random what weight they decide they want to, that they end up getting fixated on, but they want to maintain that weight, and that's the big difference, okay? And that's when you know, that's how you can decide if somebody has anorexia or bulimia. If their goal is to lose weight, it's anorexia. If their goal is to maintain weight, it's bulimia. Okay? People with anorexia tend to starve themselves. They might go very, very long periods of time without eating. They might eat non-food items like ice chips. Some actually eat cardboard or paper. Some might drink large amounts of lemon water, etc. They might binge, we'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. They might not, but their main goal is to lose weight, and they can go days, even weeks, eating minimal amounts of food or just drinking water, or starving themselves. Okay, the main diagnostic criteria is here. It's pretty straightforward. They don't maintain body weight. They tend to lose weight and be lower than is average for their height. They have an intense fear of gaining weight, etc. Okay, you can go through these. I just want to explain a couple of different points. There's two different types of anorexia. There's the restricting type and the binge purge type. With the restricting type, people just take in as little food as possible. Okay, they try not to eat. They try to take in as few calories as possible. With binging and purging, people might eat a large amount of food, which is a binge, or greater than normal amount of food, and then they'll purge. They'll do something to get it out of their system. Now, it's important that I define purging. Most people think purging is vomiting. Purging can be vomiting, but it's not always vomiting, right? So a type of purge is vomiting. There are other types of purging. Purging is a general category. Okay, you can purge by using laxatives, things that make you go to the bathroom. You can purge by using stimulant-based medications, diet pills that ultimately decrease your appetite. You can purge by using what they call fleet enemas, which are liquids that you insert into your rectum that force you to go to the bathroom. You can purge by vomiting. People argue that there's a purging called exercise purging, where basically you exercise excessively, way beyond the normal amount to get rid of the calories that you've taken in. But purging is any behavior, excessive and sort of abnormal behavior, atypical behavior, designed to quickly get rid of calories and a large amount of calories. Okay, that's purging. So yes, vomiting is a type of purging, but there's other types. And people with anorexia and bulimia who purge will think of very creative ways of purging, ways that we haven't even thought of. Okay, now, going back to anorexia. There's the restricting type, which I just talked about, and then there's the binge purge type. The binge purge type of anorexia are people who will take in a larger than normal amount of food or liquids and then purge, get rid of it somehow. Okay. Now, one of the things with people who have anorexia go through is they have a smaller ability to take in large amounts of food. Your stomach shrinks. You can get sick from it if you take in too much amount of food in too fast of a time. So typically what ends up happening is that their binges are not the large binges that we'll see with bulimia. They might be smaller binges, but even the smaller binges can get them sick. Okay. Now, there are a couple of differences between the binge purge type of anorexia and bulimia. Here they are. People with binge purge anorexia continue to be at least lower than normal body weight, right? They tend to be very, very thin. People with binge purge anorexia typically don't have a menstrual cycle. Typically, people with bulimia will continue their menstrual cycle, and people with the binge purge type of anorexia, again, don't binge the way people with bulimia do. I said that before. Their stomach shrinks, so they won't have large binges. People with bulimia can have extremely large binges. Okay, statistics of anorexia are here. To answer a couple of the questions, between 90 and 95% of people diagnosed with anorexia are female. Why? There are a lot more societal and cultural factors and gender-specific expectations that people with that females will be thinner. There's a lot more focus on body image with women. There's a lot more emphasis on looks and aesthetics and things like that. Women's bodies are also a lot more exposed in a number of different cultures than men are for different reasons. So that's one of the reasons. Caucasian women versus African American women. Again, there's cultural reasons for this. Different standards of beauty, different beliefs of beauty. Media is overwhelmingly Caucasian and geared towards Caucasian females, just in general. There are disparities there. So that explains some of the differences. There's others, but that explains a good number of them. Okay. Now, the consequences of anorexia. Your body fails. In essence, your body fails. You need the nutrients to survive. Okay, and here are some of the major things that happen to people with anorexia over a period of time. Okay, why do they tend to feel, people with anorexia tend to feel heavier even if they lose weight? One of the main reasons is there's a cognitive distortion that occurs. Your brain actually starts to misinterpret your body. We call it body dysmorphic disorder. Your brain misinterprets your body, number one. Number two, your bones can't shrink. So when you lose a lot of weight in your stomach and your waist area, your hips look bigger. And they will focus on those specific parts of their body and say, look at how wide my hips are. I'm still heavy. Okay? And so typically what ends up happening with people with anorexia is the thinner they get, the fatter they think they are. People with anorexia, tend to wear large clothing to hide their body because they're embarrassed of it, no matter how thin they tend to get. Okay, now, bulimia. People with bulimia maintain a specific body weight. They will do anything to not gain weight. People with anorexia do anything to lose weight. People with bulimia will do almost anything to maintain a particular body weight. Okay, here's the diagnostic criteria. I don't want to go through that because I only have a few more minutes in the video, but you can see this and take a look at it. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, now, the main difference between anorexia and bulimia. Okay, people with anorexia tend to starve themselves. They might do some binging or purging, but their goal is to lose weight. People with bulimia often purge. They will typically go through a binge-purge cycle where they'll eat a lot, that's their binge, and then they'll purge. They'll do something to get rid of the food. Again, exercise, laxatives, diuretics, things that make you vomit, they will go to excessive lengths to get rid of the calories that they've taken in. Okay. Typically, anorexia, not bulimia, is identified just by looking at the person. You can see this individual, typically female, but there are males that have anorexia, but typically this female who's very, very thin, very, very underweight, okay, and wearing clothing that's hanging off their body. It's easy to see, especially after a period of time. People with bulimia, on the other hand, might be caught vomiting, might be caught spending long periods of time in the bathroom after they eat, or dentists typically recognize people with bulimia because as you continue to vomit, you'll wear away the enamel in the back of your teeth. And dentists can spot that pretty quickly. So dentists tend to be one of the first lines of defense when people have bulimia. Problem is with doctor-patient confidentiality, the dentist can't report this to the family members of the people with the eating disorder. So they're kind of limited as to what they can do, but they can identify it pretty early on. Okay. Now, bulimia tends to be much more difficult to recognize and diagnose than anorexia. And the real reason for this is because people with bulimia can and usually do look or are within a normal weight. They look normal. They are within a normal weight range. They are not extremely thin. They're not extremely heavy. Okay, they look and are within normal weight range. So it's hard to diagnose. Also because they get very, very good at hiding their eating habits or their purging habits. Okay, they will binge when nobody's around. They will purge right after they eat, or they'll find a way to escape a public setting, and purge and get rid of the calories, or they'll do it when nobody else is around. Okay, so bulimia tends to be a lot more difficult to diagnose than anorexia. Types of bulimia: the purging type. Okay, they will binge and then purge. There is the non-purging type of bulimia. Again, people argue that exercise could be considered a purge. Some people say it's not. So assuming that exercise is not considered a purge, this would fall into non-purging type. They might fast, but they don't go to these excessive purges. They don't get the calories out of their body necessarily. Okay. Statistics on bulimia are here. It's pretty straightforward. So take a look at this. There's a clip. Now, binge eating disorder. This is a newer disorder. There's always been symptoms of it. It's always been something that we've talked about, but it wasn't added to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychological Disorders until about 1.5 years ago. It was known. It was something that we were aware of, but we never really thought of it. It was never clinically diagnosed. Now it is considered an eating disorder. Okay, people with binge eating disorder basically binge regularly. Okay, at least 3 times a week. And typically they ultimately end up putting on excessive amounts of weight. Okay, a binge is excessive consumption of calories within a certain period of time. All right, and people with binge eating disorder will binge. They just don't purge. Okay, so they'll put on a lot of weight because they're not purging. Statistics: between 2 and 3.5% of the population have this disorder. It is the most common type of eating disorder. If you consider this an eating disorder, it's the most common type, and it is now considered an eating disorder by the DSM-5. It wasn't before. Okay, binge eating disorder certainly relates and contributes to obesity. There's absolutely many other reasons why people can be obese, but binge eating disorder, or people with binge eating disorder, can and typically commonly are obese. Okay, there are some slides on obesity here. I don't want to go through them too much because it's not recognized as an eating disorder. Different origins of eating disorders. Okay, genetics is certainly part of it. Biological causes, sociocultural perspective, right? The belief that the media is contributing and putting a lot of pressure on people, and this certainly does contribute to eating disorders. People might have emotional regulation issues. Cognitive restructuring might need to be taken place, right? People have misinterpretations of their own body, misexpectations or false beliefs about what they should look like. Family dynamics and family structure, again, expectations of the family and how they work, okay, and how people should look and how people should eat and behave. All right. Now, one thing to remember with eating disorders, and you can take a look at the treatments here. They're pretty straightforward. One thing to remember with eating disorders is you cannot put people who have eating disorders into group therapy. Again, they don't want treatment for their disorder, and what they tend to do when they're in group therapy is they tend to share secrets and teach each other how to get away with binging and how to get away with purging without getting caught. If you have questions about this, feel free to email me. Hopefully this video was helpful.